Oh boy, that water's getting cold. So where are those bass going in the wintertime, and how are we going to catch them? Well, for me, winter bass fishing is when that water temperature is below that 45-degree mark. And up here in the northern part of the country, I've got a window of a month or two before that ice starts to freeze things over. But winter fishing down south, anglers are lucky. They can keep going to that lake all winter long and don't have to deal with a hard water situation. But let's jump into where the bass are going to be and then the presentations that I use to catch them. I break down my winter bass fishing locations into 3 particular spots. First, can I find rock? They love hanging on rock in the wintertime. Now, if you're on a highland type of a reservoir and it's all rock, well, in that situation, I'm going to try to find some abnormalities. You know, is there a rock hump out there? Is there a long tapering point that has a big boulder on it? So look for something that is different, and definitely scouring your electronics is going to help you locate those places in that rocky lake or reservoir that is a little bit different. Now, for lots of bodies of water, they've got some rock, but not a ton. Well, man, that's the first place I'm going. Find a rock pile, fish the rock. The second thing I'm looking for is really hard structure or cover that is not rock. For example, my absolute favorite are seawalls. There are so many places, especially if you've got a fishery that's got a lot of commercial type of activity. Seawalls are put in for erosion purposes, and they can be bass magnets in the winter time. Some other possibilities as far as hard types of cover besides seawalls, your dock pilings can be really, really good. Boat ramps, I've seen bass in the wintertime, especially when the sun is out for a little bit, they'll just get up and congregate on that concrete at the boat ramp. So those are good places as well. And depending on the water that you're fishing, maybe the only type of hard cover there is timber. So make sure that you check that out. Now, let's say you've got none of it. You don't have rock, you really don't have much hard cover, and you've got a lake that is mainly a silty, muddy type of a bottom composition. Well, in that case, I'm going to the absolute center to the deepest point. And let's start off with something simple. Let's imagine a farm pond, okay? So let's say you've got a farm pond and the deepest point is 14 feet or so. That's where I'm going. I'm going to throw those lures right in that deepest part of the farm pond. And if it's a muddy, silty bottom, odds are those bass have got those bellies right down there on the bottom. If you're in a bigger lake with a boat, it's going to be hard to see them on the electronics. You still can sometimes, but they're really going to be buried up down there in the bottom. Now let's take that farm pond imagery and apply it to something bigger, a bigger lake or reservoir. Maybe this is going to be a creek arm, okay? Maybe it's going to be one particular section of a lake. Find the deepest point in those areas and start there right in the center. We go out on the water in the wintertime, we're like, man, there's nothing. There's no life, there's no bluegills, there's no anything. Well, it's because they've pulled off the bank, gone there to the center, and that's where they are sitting. If you're a river angler, small rivers especially, you're going to want to focus on those deeper holes. Let's say you've got a river that's 2 to 3 feet and you normally wade it all summer long, but then you have a section that's 8 feet. That's going to be a great spot for those fish to winter over. In one scientific study that I was reading, they had tagged a smallmouth. These scientists had tagged a smallmouth, and that fish traveled 23 miles to its wintering location. Well, I don't know about you, but I rarely fish a 23-mile section of a small river. So you might go out to your favorite stream and there's just no fish anywhere. Well, they could have traveled many, many miles. A good way to locate those areas is get on Google Earth. It is so nice with those satellite images. You can pick out those deeper pockets pretty quickly and pretty easily. All right, now what about the lures? Well, I've got 4 that I love to fish in the wintertime. My number 1 choice for winter bass is going to be dragging a Ned rig. So I'm going to throw that Ned rig out there, let it sink down to the bottom, and just drag it ever so slightly. I'm not going to impart much action on it. Number 2 is going to be the same presentation, but instead of a Ned rig, I'm going to be using a jig, a small little jig. Maybe it's 1/4 ounce, a 1/2 ounce if I'm fishing a little bit deeper, but same thing, put it out there, just barely drag it across the bottom. It's a slow presentation and can be tough mentally, but it's very effective. I even had a viewer last winter said, Steve, this dragging a Ned rig worked great. And I think this this angler was from Michigan, if I remember correctly. The third thing that I'm going to do, especially if we've had a little bit of a warming trend and maybe those bass are up suspended a little bit, is I'm going to be swimming a Paddletail swim bait, usually a model that has like the ribs and stuff, like a Rage Swimmer on there. And I'm going to do a couple things. I'm either going to count it down to a depth if I can mark where those fish are hanging out, or I'm going to let it sink all the way down to the bottom and then just a nice steady retrieve. I'm not going to do a whole lot to it, just nice steady retrieve. A Paddletail swim bait is an excellent winter time lure. And as a matter of fact, in that mid belt of the country, through the Ozarks, Tennessee, Kentucky, that area, I've run across so many great wintertime anglers that use a single tail grub. They throw it out there, sink it all the way to the bottom, straight retrieve back, and they catch good bass all winter with it. And the fourth one that I'm going to use, if I can mark fish on my electronics and fish it vertically, is going to be a Damiki rig with the baby Z2 on there. And the reason for this lure is it's more neutrally buoyant. It's a Elaztech, which wants to float, but yet it's salt impregnated, which will keep it down and more neutrally buoyant. And if I can pick them on that graph, and oftentimes you're going to see the bottom, and you're going to get a slight little hump there in the bottom. If you've got the colored graph, the coloration is going to be slightly different. I'll drop that Damiki rig right down there to them and just fish it straight above them. That is also an excellent wintertime presentation. Now, I'm not going to lie, when it's wintertime, I'm going out for bites as opposed to thinking about big fish. I just want to get some bites. But the neat thing is these wintertime schools can be massive. You can have so many fish in one area. So if you start to mark them and catch them and find them, boy, you could just have a pile of bass down there and have an excellent day. Hey, if you want to watch a video on Ned rigging specifically in the wintertime, go ahead and check this one out right here. And don't forget to go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.